Welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. We bring you the right information to empower you, the SME entrepreneur. Tonight on the show, we're breaking down the impact of the interim budget 2019 for you, the SME entrepreneur, telling you what the biggest impact has been and what the next couple of months are likely to be for you. And we have an expert panel lined up. Let me start quickly by introducing our experts, starting with my immediate right. First up tonight, it's our pleasure to introduce Dr. Velumani. He's the MD of Thyrocare Technologies. We also have with us tonight KK Mohanty, MD of Gammon Infrastructure Projects. Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist, Care Ratings, is also joining us in studio. We have Rohit Jain from the Economic Law Practices. Kirandip Swani, MD of Swani Spice Mills, and also joining us in studio tonight, Himanshu Parekh, Partner and Head Corporate and International Tax, KPMG. Gentlemen, such a pleasure having each of you joining us here tonight to really talk about the impact that we're going to see for SMEs, MSMEs, entrepreneurs, and leading up to the budget. And leading up really to the elections, which is going to be a much more of a bigger impact for small businesses. We've seen a lot of commentary coming for small businesses. So maybe given the fact also that this is an interim budget, we are expecting the full budget in June and July of this year. Not too much was expected, but that said, and this question is open to all of you experts here on the panel tonight. What do you really make of some of the announcements that we've seen, whether it's for small businesses or just overall to give us your perspective to say this perhaps, according to me, would be a rating that I would want to give it?
It gives an optic illusion that it's all given for poor. Hardly anything is there. And unfortunately, the government cannot also commit too much at the eve of the poll. It will be criticized.
Sure.
I have a reason to believe the direction is towards helping the bottom of the pyramid at the cost of the top of the pyramid.
Well, basically, you know, we all know that this is a kind of an election budget where you put out proposals which do no harm to anybody. But yes, I mean, granted that they have taken pains to address the SME and the lower sectors, and I think if it continues that way, it's going in the right direction.
Sure.
Basically, three macro level comments. To appreciate the richness of the budget, might be you have to remain poor so that you can appreciate the richness of the budget.
Okay.
So the second is there is no incentive for productivity. There is too much of incentive to remain idle. And third thing is today the major problem is economy and employment might be in the country, and everybody is aware about it. And there has been no incentive and those steps taken, including the correcting the banking structure or flowing in the credit to the market, attracting investment, which would have really created economy to boost and the employment to be generated.
Sure.
But nonetheless, the positive aspect of it is, yes, they are trying to the right segment.
Okay.
It is an election year, it is understandable.
Sure.
Hopefully the final budget in June and will have more takeaways for the real larger issues like the economy, employment.
What would you make of this?
No, in fact, I think we should remember that this is an interim budget and there are certain restrictions or limitations to what the finance minister could do. So I think within these constraints and fairly prudent budget targeting, I think they have looked at an increase in the overall size of the budget of around 13.5%. And they've allocated the funds to the needy sections. So I think it's been very progressive to give some kind of minimum income to certain sections of farmers, and certain incentives for the lower income earners, as well as for the SMEs. So I think on the whole, it's been done very well. I don't think there were too many expectations of any radical changes in the tax structure and incentives. I think that's something we'll have to wait for in June, July.
Sure. Rohit?
Yeah, as Madan said, we should remember this was an interim budget.
Yeah.
It cannot give a lot of incentives, lot of announcements.
But it has managed to give quite a few.
It has managed to still give quite few of them, and I think we should give credit to that.
Yeah.
But as claimed by the government that this is still a trailer and not the full film.
Okay.
And ideally it should be just trailer. Because otherwise post-election it should not become this was the film and everything has been forgotten thereafter.
Sure.
Yeah, again, as rightly mentioned by two of my panelists, given that this was just an interim budget, a vote on account, it would be futile to expect much from the government therein. But three big ticket items out there, a lot of reliefs being given to the farm sector, the pension plan for the unorganized sector, and on the income tax front for individuals, series of incentives being announced for individuals. I think that augurs very well for the population of India. And if you also see the run-up to the budget, not the budget announcement itself, you know, the relaxation, be it in terms of GST, the lowering of rates, the composition scheme, the increase in the limit for GST registration, so on and so forth. I think it was a good job done by the government.
Okay, so I want to
if I could just come in out here, and I think what we should appreciate is that all these incentives which have been given are going to lead to higher consumption and would probably also justify the kind of tax projections which have been made in this budget.
Fair enough. I just want to pick up on what Himanshu said, and while this is open to the panel, Himanshu, let me come to you first. In terms of the GST announcement that's been made, the 2% interest rebate for an incremental loan of up to 1 crore. Big boost?
Very much, yes. A 2% relief subsidy on a loan of 1 crore will result in an annual saving of 2 lakh rupees, which I think is significant.
Sure, sure. Would the rest of the panel agree with that?
Yeah, so taking it from what Himanshu said, so GST has been one of the important aspects for the SME sector. According to me, SME sector has been going through for last 3 years some disruptions. 2016 we had demonetization. 2017 we had now GST. 2018 we had NBFC's entire crisis. And SME has been going through the disruption all along.
Sure.
GST increasing the composition scheme or exemption from 20 lakhs to 40 lakhs, reducing the rate of tax, and more importantly, reducing the compliance. Now, what has been proposed is doing the quarterly return is definitely help the SME sector.
Madan, if you have any comments to add to that before I want to talk about also liquidity.
So actually, when we are talking of the budget and SMEs, I think we should remember that the budget is one part of providing incentives, and I think the government has taken a number of proactive steps in order to further the flow of funds as well as the convenience phase for SMEs, also making sure that they get into the GST bracket, which I think that's the way we should be looking at it.
Sure. The infrastructure space, of course, has seen quite a few challenges when it comes to raising funds and the liquidity situation. But that said, the government did announce that loans up to 1 crore under 59 minutes for small businesses will ensure that it is being approved, it's not necessarily sanctioned. I do remember that when we had experts coming together before the budget right here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, the opinion largely was that we cannot force banks to give loans in that shorter time frame, because that could perhaps lead to the kind of NPA crisis that we've seen that has happened for the infrastructure space. What do you think should be done? What needs to be done going forward from here to ease the liquidity crisis for small businesses?
First of all, today the banks really don't feel that they don't have the money to lend. What has been problem is the delivery system or the internal system of NPAs and the so-called investigations into frauds into different cases, which has slowed down the whole process of delivery of credit. Otherwise, banks are rather in a reverse position today. They have a commitment liability of paying interest on the deposits and do not advance enough to earn interest. So that's the situation. The liquidity is not a challenge for delivering credit. The challenge is today the delivery system, the mess created around NPA and all the confusion or mess created about the investigations, frauds and other things. Credit is such a thing should not be interfered by any agency. The guy who is owning the money, he is the only right to take a credit decision. So directing or a command delivery system of credit that 59 minutes you must give 1 crore of rupees is, I think, is not very far-fetched, and it will create another mess in might be sometime distributing money to the people.
Government has to find out balance between liquidity and also recoveries and also comfort for the man to borrow. I fully agree with him. Some banks have too much money, some banks have too much problem, and other banks are worried how to disburse and how to remain honestly distributed or given. I think it's a matter of trust coming back. It should be in place soon.
Let me come specifically to the agri space and talk about the fact that in this budget we did see a few announcements coming in. 12 crore agri households will be given an income support of 6,000 per year. We've heard comments on how the consumption economy is being boosted. As the expert from the space who's so closely associated with what is happening when it comes to boosting of consumption and the agri space, Mr. Swani, my question to you really is to try and understand, are you happy with the announcements we've seen?
Yes, the SOPs that are being given does go a long way. I'm just reflecting off to a comment that the Prime Minister made that I want to double the income of the farmers. Granted, it's a good move, it's a good thought. But what are you going to do? You're going to double the remuneration, or you're going to put him on his feet by assisting him in technology and improved yields and productivity.
Sure.
That's where the focus needs to be, rather than giving him highest minimum support prices.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a very quick break on that note, but much more on the other side. Just stay tuned. Welcome back with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, and tonight we're breaking down the announcements we heard in the interim budget for you, the SME entrepreneur. One more thing that I want to talk about, which is of relevance to our viewers, and Himanshu, I will come to you first on this, but this is for everyone on this panel, is the issue of angel tax.
Yes.
That's been on the radar of entrepreneurs for a really long time. Himanshu, Rohit, Madan, for the rest of the panel as well. Just your comments on the fact that, yeah, there hasn't been much more.
That has been a major pain point or a thorn in the flesh, if I may say so, for the startup community. So we have this provision in the income tax law, section 56, which says that when a company issues shares at a premium to resident shareholders, if the value at which the shares have been issued exceeds the fair value of the shares, then the excess amount will be deemed to be income of the company. The genesis to this provision being introduced in the law is that the government used to see a lot of black money getting diverted into companies by companies issuing shares at a premium. Sure. And to curb this practice, they've issued this provision. The problem here is that just because you may have one or two black sheep in the flock, you can't paint everybody with the same brush, right? Now what's happening here is that the moment companies issue shares at a particular price,
sure,
there's a fair valuation which the company will do, and then there's an assessment of the fair valuation which the tax officer will do.
Sure.
Now, beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Who better than the investor to decide what is the fair value of the shares at which the investment needs to be made, rather than asking a tax officer to sit in judgment and ascertain the fair value of the shares. Recently, they issued a notification to say that where companies issue shares, if the aggregate amount of share capital and share premium does not exceed 10 crore rupees, coupled with a couple of other conditions, then the startup can make an application to the DIPP, which will in turn get an approval from the Central Board of Direct Taxes, where an exemption may be given from this provision.
Sure.
Which is a very, very welcome relief.
Sure.
But the problem here is that you're just talking about shares having an aggregate value of 10 crore rupees, which is too small a limit. I think that limit should be significantly expanded, and the benefit should be given to many more.
Rohit, even as you're responding to that, I also want you to comment on the fact that we've seen quite a few announcements coming for the real estate space. Just maybe quick one or two takeaways on that.
Clearly, real estate is into doldrum today. The way they are facing, one of the, of course, again, 2016 demonetization, 2017 GST. GST has actually killed the sector entirely, I must tell you, because GST was something which originally the tax was paid under construction property was only 5.5%, and today you end up paying tax of 12% with small credits. Look at it, cities like Mumbai where large value flats are sold, how much is the credit available? The tax burden itself has gone up at least by 5 to 6%. with addition of 6% stamp duty. A lot of steps I think has been taken in this interim budget, wherein some relaxation, whether it's a deemed house property income, whether giving benefit to individual where if you can invest in second house, there will be a benefit granted. Yeah. You have a 2 lakhs limits for the interest, what you can pay on the housing loan. So a lot of benefits have been given. More importantly, affordable housing. Yeah. The and benefit is extended by 1 year to 2020, and that will be a year booster for the sector.
Great. Let's also talk about another big boost for the small businesses, and that's as far as the outlay for Ayushman Bharat is concerned. When the announcement was made of Ayushman Bharat, most SMEs were very excited because that is something that will definitely have a big impact. My question to you, Dr. Velumani, the allocation has been increased, you know, almost 200%, 167%. Your comments in terms of what should small businesses do to ensure that they are effectively participating in Ayushman Bharat?
First and foremost, it has happened. It has been announced and it has started rolling out. It's a very happy news. Government has been in right direction. Now, increment of just 167% in that meager 2,400 crore isn't a very big one, number one.
Sure.
Number two, what they have done, from all the healthcare expenditures, they have withdrawn adequately and put it into Ayushman Bharat to give an impression that is 167. Overall, 13% only has grown in the healthcare expenditure of this country.
Okay.
And that is only 1% of the GDP, whereas the policy tells it's around 2.5%.
Sure.
Having said that, that is little, but something is there. Now coming to the scheme, entire scheme, in a pyramid of healthcare, big players in the top, small players in the bottom. This scheme is going to help only to the bottom half of the pyramid, not the top of the pyramid, because all prices are controlled, all prices will be capped.
But that's still a substantial opportunity, isn't it?
Opportunity for the middle of the pyramid.
Sure.
SMEs certainly will benefit a lot.
Yeah.
They need to have capacities, they need to have beds. But unfortunately, there has been no provision for helping them to increase the number of hospitals and beds. This is my
okay, so you're saying there are still bottlenecks there?
Yes.
Several. Okay. Mr. Mohanty, let's talk about the infrastructure space. Piyush Goyal, when announcing the interim budget, said that India is the fastest growing highways developer anywhere in the world. That said, several challenges really clog the infrastructure space. We did speak about liquidity, but I want to understand from you, perhaps, PPP. Do you think small businesses are maybe in a position to enter into such PPPs? What is your advice for them to perhaps take better charge and make better use of the opportunities that are coming into infrastructure, of the money that's possibly going to come in?
No, first of all, in this country, we have killed the PPP concept.
Okay.
That's for the reason of two count. One is,
sure,
this is a PPP, is a credit-hungry business. So unless the banking structure is not operating, India is not a very big equity market. Sure. It is only a debt market which drives the business like PPP. If the equity is not available and the delivery system of credit is today almost non-existent, then the PPP is killed for all time to come, or at least for next decade.
Sure.
And not I am talking about even 2, 3, 5 years, one election, for next decade. Second thing is, any credit delivery system would look at some historical data or the financial conditions of the government. Today, 90% of the infrastructure companies doldrums. Their financial balance sheets and PL accounts are absolutely messed up. The new Dabang players who are talking about the market coming up, they have already shown the only sign of falling apart. The share prices have come down from 200 to almost 30%
sure,
of it. Government in this sector has in last 5 years has improved the expenses a little bit. Or little significantly. There has been cash contracts where might be new players and the small players have been benefited, but the top end players, their solution or their re-energizing depends upon how quickly the government is resolve the dispute areas with them.
Sure. Gentlemen, we're running out of time on this panel, but I very quickly want to discuss a couple of things before we wind down. And let me come to you first, Himanshu, and talk about the fact that the full and final budget is not too many months away from now. One or two things that you're expecting which will have an impact for small businesses.
If I was to do some bit of crystal ball gazing
sure,
out here, my expectation would be that, number one, if you look at a lot of MSMEs, they are structured in the form of partnership firms. And partnership firms today are subject to tax at the rate of 30% versus companies having a turnover less than 250 crores who are subject to tax at 25%. So there needs to be a level playing field between corporates and partnership firms, whereby the rate of tax should come down to 25% for partnership firms.
Sure.
The second big relief I would expect from the government is some relaxation on angel taxation, is what we spoke about.
Sure.
And the third one is abolition of minimum alternate tax.
Very quickly, I want to talk about, if you can, talk to our viewers about the biggest changes we're likely to see because of the changed e-commerce rules.
Yeah, I think e-commerce has been one of the main disruption in the SME sector as well. A lot of people, instead of going to the retail outlets, have started buying through the e-commerce platform now. We have a draft e-commerce policy. In fact, that has now become effective from 1st of February. Some of the issues got addressed. I think a lot of things still to be done to support the SME sector. Nowadays, you see the large deep discounts have been offered on the e-commerce, but not on the retail outlet. I think something needs to be done very aggressively.
Madan, the big picture question to you as we're winding down this panel: Brexit, what is happening in the US in terms of, the government shutdown, threat of the government shutdown going forward. What is the biggest impact small businesses perhaps should be facing?
No, in fact, if you're looking at something like Brexit, I would tend to think that there's an opportunity at least for SMEs, especially if you're looking in terms of the export space, because I think they're quite dominant when it comes to Indian exports. And based on all the dynamics which could probably result on account of a Brexit, I think there is an opportunity for us to push forward our exports. Then of course for this has to be tied up with credit. I think that's one of the requirements of SMEs. So I think all that we have heard in the budget, prior to the budget, I think it all fits into the picture about increasing their exports. It could also be positive for us in terms of investments and as well as labor movement. So I think these are the three areas which could be opportunities for us.
Okay, great. To the right side of my panel, Dr. Velumani, Mr. Swani and Mr. Mohanty, I just very quickly want to take closing comments from you. First off, back home, the elections are coming up. That's likely to have the biggest impact for all businesses. If you can talk about what should small businesses keep in mind looking forward to the elections, how perhaps things are going to change, and also there were some announcements on digital. So very quickly, I want to sneak in a question on that. Let me start with you, Dr. Velumani.
My expectation, if you ask me, government should increase every year 0.5% GDP in healthcare till it reaches at least 6-7%.
Okay.
The third one is, they should not charge a custom duty for the material in diagnostics or in healthcare which is not manufactured in India.
Sure.
These three are my expectations.
Sure.
Basically, as far as the US trade war with China is concerned, I think the worst is over. It's only going to get more and more softer now. Brexit, again, as he rightly said, is a huge opportunity for us. But my gut feeling is that the deadline will be extended from 31st March.
Okay.
But yeah, if it doesn't, you know, we are still part of the Commonwealth. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for us.
Okay, fair enough.
My expectation from my country will be, if we remain to be progressive and dynamic, we need to incentivize production and productivity.
Absolutely.
Today we are incentivizing unproductivity by doling out 6,000 rupees and 6,000 rupees, give 10,000 rupees, but a guy who is producing, give him for his product, you give a higher price. So the basic requirement will be the mindset of vote bank politics to dole out benefits where the productivity is not there is self-destructive for the country.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time here tonight. Completely out of time on this expert panel, but do get in touch with us if you have any comments or takeaways. Reach us on email. leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com is our email ID. Reach us also on social media, Sunanda_J or LOT_ET now on Twitter, Leaders of Tomorrow and ET now on Facebook. Thanks for watching. Have a good night. As per the new tri-tariff order, you now have the power to choose and pay only for the channels you love. To keep watching Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now, call your cable or DTH operator and get the Times movies and news pack now.
Complete your TV viewing experience with the best of Hollywood entertainment and news. Get the Times movies and news pack at just 13 rupees. Ask your cable or DTH provider now.